Hey guys! Tonight we drift high above the clouds and into the marble halls of Mount Olympus, where the gods are loud, their sandals are louder, and someone is always starting drama about nectar rations. You find yourself padding quietly across a floor of gold-veined stone, flanked by pillars that shimmer with lightning and boredom. The sky outside shifts from purple to deeper purple, and the clouds seem too fluffy to be trustworthy. Athena is already here, of course, towering, poised, and doing her best to look disinterested in everything. You notice her helmet sits on a polished pedestal, collecting dust. She hasn't worn it in ages. She's still technically the goddess of war and wisdom, but war's gotten repetitive, and wisdom, well, it doesn't pay what it used to. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always find it amazing how these sleepy stories connect us across time zones, couches, and cozy nests of blankets. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander past a column where Hermes has scrawled something immature in divine script, and into the heart of the great hall where the gods are gathered in another weekly meeting that definitely could have been an email. Zeus is pretending to listen to a minor god's complaint about barley shortages while surreptitiously braiding his own beard. Hera is fuming silently because her ceremonial peacock spilled something sticky on her robe. You sit quietly in the back and observe, which, given Olympus's track record, is probably safest. Athena rests her chin on one hand, elbow on marble, expressions somewhere between dignified and "I could be inventing mathematics right now." You can tell she's not really listening either. Her thoughts are elsewhere, tangled up in mortal things. What humans are doing, what they're building, and whether they're using the tools she graciously gave them to make anything actually useful. You might assume the gods are above petty bickering, but really, they're ancient influencers with fewer filters. Apollo keeps showing off his sun chariot routes like a fitness tracker. Poseidon's still bitter that Athens chose Athena over him. He mutters, "should have picked salt water," under his breath every third Tuesday. Even Dionysus is sulking because no one laughed at his new mortal wine hybrid. Historians still argue whether it gave people visions or just an aggressive headache. But tonight, as the wind drifts softly through the open halls and owl feathers swirl underfoot, Athena is quieter than usual. She's thinking about hands, mortal hands specifically, how they fumble and fidget, how they make things. She's noticed that when humans aren't fighting or worshiping or inventing cheese for some reason, they weave, they braid grass, they twist vines, they knot strings. Something primal, almost meditative. Athena, you see, is fascinated by order, patterns, logic, geometry hiding inside chaos. The more she watches mortal women twist fibers into thread, the more curious she becomes. Not jealous exactly, she's a goddess, but interested, inspired even. You can almost see her fingers twitch with ideas. And so, when the council adjourns, with no decisions made and 5 fresh grudges born, Athena stands up abruptly and says something vague about air circulation research before vanishing in a flash of olive-scented mist. No one follows. They've learned not to when she gets like this. The last time she disappeared mid-meeting, she came back with a glowing coin that doubled as a calendar. It caused a minor recession in 3 regions. She reappears in a mortal village, not one of the grand cities, but a smaller one, nestled in the crook of a river like a lazy cat. It's twilight. Mortals are winding down, feeding goats, yelling at kids to come inside, pretending not to notice strange glowing women wandering around in owl-themed armor. She walks unnoticed to a quiet home where a girl is spinning thread with her grandmother. The spindle hums in rhythm with the chirping of crickets. The goddess crouches in the shadows watching the motions. The girl isn't even good at it. Her threads are uneven, tangled, but there's something honest about it, something pleasing. It's here, in the lull of an ordinary evening, that Athena gets her first idea. Not a war strategy, not a philosophical treatise, just a pattern. A small, neat twist of thread that wants to become something more. That night, while the mortals sleep, Athena returns to Olympus. She doesn't summon her armor or her shield. She opens the heavy cedar chest at the foot of her chamber and begins pulling out odd things: feathers, bones, spider silk, and even some mysterious golden hair that might have once belonged to Apollo's favorite harp. She builds the first loom. Not the first thing ever made for weaving, of course. Humans had been twisting stuff together for centuries. But this loom is different. It's divine. It hums when touched. It glows faintly when you whisper to it. It doesn't ask for offerings, just thread. The next morning, a dozen gods knock on Athena's chamber door, wondering about the strange noise. She shoos them away with vague comments about experimental textiles. She's already deep into the work. Threads looped and crossed, patterns emerging, some mathematical, some symbolic, all stitched with a kind of sacred intensity that even the sun pauses a little on its arc. This is how it begins, not with war, not prophecy, or even a dramatic thunderbolt, but with a goddess kneeling before a wooden frame, pulling threads tight with ancient fingers, humming to herself like a mortal grandmother. It's peaceful, beautiful, a little boring, perfect for sleep, and absolutely about to spiral out of control.
The threads pull tighter under your fingers, and your breath slows to match the soft rhythm of Athena's weaving. You blink, and suddenly it's morning again on Olympus. Except the sun seems a little embarrassed to peek in too early, as though it knows this is sacred, secret work. You hover silently near Athena's chamber, where the goddess is hunched over the loom like a teenager mid-craft project, surrounded by piles of what can only be described as experimental yarn. Feathers, some owls, some peacocks, some probably illegal even by divine standards, are bound into her warp threads. She's experimenting. A little linen here, some woven goat hair there, and oh yes, a tuft of what might be cat hair. No one's seen Apollo's chariot cat since Tuesday, so suspicions swirl. Athena isn't just making pretty cloth. She's exploring tension, structure, how warp threads hold firm while the weft glides between them like diplomacy through a senate. She's creating metaphors as much as garments. The fabric takes on shapes, geometric spirals, concentric olive branches, and in a particularly petty corner, what might be Poseidon tripping over his own trident? Every god has their creative outlet. Hermes once tried stand-up comedy and bond at every temple. Artemis paints moonlight on cave walls. Even Hades once took a pottery, though it was mostly skull-themed mugs. But Athena, she's serious. She weaves with the intensity of a tactician, calculating the angles and intersections like she's designing the perfect ambush, except instead of spears, there's alpaca fiber. You watch her hands as they move with quiet precision. Left, right, over, under. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative. The kind of repetitive piece that makes you forget time exists. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you feel your muscles slacken. This is definitely better than war. But like anything on Olympus, it doesn't stay simple. By mid-morning, other gods have started hovering in the hallway like nosy co-workers near a microwave. Dionysus pokes his head in with a half-full goblet. "What you making?" he slurs, already hiccuping. Athena doesn't answer. She just tightens another thread. Even Hera pauses to peek inside. He raises an eyebrow at the chaos of materials scattered across the floor, clay dyes, moss ink, bits of bronze, and says nothing, but you can tell from the way her lips twitch that she was both impressed and mildly concerned. See, gods don't usually invent things by hand. They decree, they conjure, they manifest. Getting your hands dirty is more of a mortal hobby. And yet, here is Athena, goddess of strategic warfare, kneeling on the floor like a mortal grandma at a village fair, twisting fibers into stories.
It doesn't help that she's good. Really good. Her first tapestry, a large olive-toned thing with subtle golden threads, tells the story of the founding of Athens, but through abstract shapes and color gradients that somehow manage to shame every epic poem ever written. You don't read it so much as feel it. Even Aries stops by to grumble that it feels like being punched in the feelings. Now, historians still argue whether weaving already existed in some refined form among mortals before this moment. Some say Athena merely enhanced what humans have been doing with reeds and sinew for centuries. Others believe her divine invention set the artistic standard that mortals would forever chase. Either way, what happens next is always what happens when a god does something impressive. Everyone else starts trying to copy her. Apollo commissions a tapestry of a sun carriage. It looks like a doodle from an expensive spa brochure. Artemis tries to embroider the night sky and ends up snarling thread around a stag's antlers. Even Hephaestus gets involved, building a mechanical loom that explodes when someone says pattern repeat too loudly. The petty arms race begins. But Athena doesn't care about their nonsense. She's already several weaves ahead, now experimenting with storytelling through thread. Her newest piece, a landscape of mortal life, subtly stitched with tiny moments, a child feeding chickens, an old woman mending a sock, two lovers braiding each other's hair under the stars. It's boring, it's quiet, and it's magnificent. She's not trying to impress anyone. She's creating for the joy of it, for the calming rhythm, for the hum that lives between every warp and weft. But still, news spreads. Down to mortal world, whispers trickle from priest to merchant to shepherd. They say, the goddess Athena is crafting stories in cloth, patterns woven with meaning, with power. Some claim her tapestries glow with hidden prophecy. Others swear they heard the threads whisper names in the wind. Entire villages start hoarding flax and sheepwool just in case weaving becomes the next divine commandment. It gets weirder. One wandering oracle reports a vision of a great loom that holds the fates of all mankind. 3 women weaving the threads of life, snipping them at death. Totally different myth, but you know how rumors work. Athena suddenly getting credit for inventing everything with string. Meanwhile, you trail behind her like a quiet owl, observing how she transforms boredom into legacy. You heard her mutter once, half to herself, half to loom. It's not about winning, it's about pattern. A pause. No, winning would be nice. And then one morning, after days of weaving in solitude, she stops, steps back, surveys her wall of finished works. She doesn't smile, she's too dignified for that. But you can see the satisfaction in her eyes, the stillness, the order, and if gods could sigh, she would. You fall asleep for a blink, and when you open your eyes, the room is empty. The loom is quiet. The olive-scented mist hangs gently in the air. Athena has left, and something tells you this is only the beginning.
You wake, or maybe drift, into the warm hush of an afternoon on Olympus. The air tastes faintly of olives and ozone, and the world is quieter now. No arguments about lightning bolt distribution, no Hermes zipping past in a blur of feathers and smugness. Just the sound of soft wind rustling through potted laurels, and the occasional hoot of an owl perched too close to a scroll library. Athena is gone again. This time, she's not in her loom room, and she's definitely not in the meeting halls, which currently echo with nothing but the snores of 2 minor wind gods. You follow a trail of loose feathers and fabric, like divine breadcrumbs, through a side hall, down a spiral stair you didn't even know existed, and out onto a balcony overlooking the mortal world. There, perched on the rail, like some cross between a philosopher and a wildlife enthusiast, sits Athena. Her armor is gone. She's wearing a simple, unadorned linen robe. On her shoulder, an owl with eyes like polished bronze and a gaze that says, "Don't even try me." She's watching the earth below, watching people. And she's thinking, That particular kind of Athena thinking that has, historically, led to things like chariot warfare, diplomatic treaties, and once, very briefly, alphabet soup. You settle beside her, and she glances at you only once, as if to say, "Good, someone who won't interrupt." Then she points, and your gaze follows. Down below, in a dusty village near the Lycus River, mortals are bustling about like ants. But one small girl, no older than 10, is crouched in the shade of a fig tree, watching a spider. Not screaming, not squashing it, just watching, and then mimicking. She takes a frayed vine and begins twisting it, awkwardly but with purpose, into a pattern. Athena smiles faintly. She murmurs, "Even spiders understand structure." The owl ruffles its feathers in agreement or possibly disdain. Hard to say with owls. You lean forward as she continues. She's been studying more than just mortals. She's noticed how certain creatures, spiders, weaver birds, even caterpillars, create intricate patterns instinctively. She finds it beautiful, efficient, a kind of logic that speaks directly to her. It's here that Athena has her second idea. The first idea was weaving. The second is that maybe weaving isn't just about cloth. Maybe it's about truth. So she starts collecting things. Not scrolls, not weapons, not even wool this time. She gathers symbols, stories, metaphors. She paints with them. Not literally, she leaves that to Apollo's disastrous attempt at frescoes, but through thread. She begins hiding messages in her tapestries, lessons, warnings, gentle jokes at Zeus's expense. And nature keeps whispering back. She observes how owls rotate their heads impossibly far and sews an optical illusion into her next piece that seems to follow you around the room. She notices how olive trees twist but never break, and uses them as borders for her most complex designs. And in a particularly nerdy moment, she calculates the golden ratio into a repeating spiral and hides it in the background of an entire tapestry. Historians still argue whether Athena was actually the first to encode geometric principles into textile art. Some point to Sumerian motifs or Egyptian linen bands, but others insist that the sudden explosion of precision and complexity in Greek fabrics came after Athena's quiet obsession with olive leaves and spiderwebs. The fringe community, meanwhile, believes she got the idea from a prophetic dream shared by all barn owls simultaneously. These people are not invited to symposiums. And then, one afternoon, it happens. She's lounging by a spring near a grove of sacred olive trees. It's quiet, the way libraries wish they could be. The owl is asleep. The sunlight dapples through the leaves, painting shifting shapes on the marble beside her. And a tiny spider lowers itself onto her hand. Not a special spider. Not glowing, not singing riddles. Just a spider. 8 legs, fuzzy abdomen, doing its weird upside-down tango. And then it spins. A single thread stretches between Athena's finger and the tree bark beside her, and the spider begins to weave. Not random, but deliberate, symmetrical, beautiful. Athena watches, transfixed. "That," she says softly, "is elegance." That night, she creates her most famous tapestry to date, though it's now lost to time, faded into whispers and art historian debates. The only known detail is that it featured a spider, an owl, and a tree intertwined in ways so precise that mathematicians centuries later still try to recreate it using software and too much coffee. You might not realize it yet, but this is the turning point, not just for Athena, but for weaving, for mortals, for storytelling itself. Because from here on out, weaving won't just be a craft, it'll be a metaphor, a ritual, a way to say the unsayable. And it all started with a bored goddess, a spider, and a really, really good eye for pattern. You settle into the olive-scented evening, your eyelids heavier now. Somewhere below, mortals begin imitating gods again, and the first looms hum like gentle thunder in sleepy huts.
The tapestry hangs in Athena's chamber like a soft thunderclap, bold, silent, and oddly judgmental. It's not flashy, no gold threads or divine sparkles, but the composition pulls your gaze, holds it, and doesn't let go. A spider at the center, weaving, an owl perched above, watchful, olive branches twisting into fractals at the border, and in between, shapes that shift every time you blink. You sit there, half dreaming, and feel the story in the thread. Not hear it, feel it, like an idea brushing your thoughts while you're trying to fall asleep. It's not a tale with heroes or monsters. It's not a war epic or a love tragedy. It's quiet, reflective, the kind of story that leaves you staring at your ceiling, wondering how long it's been whispering to you. But Athena doesn't stop there. That tapestry was never meant to be the end. It was a test, a prototype. And now she's weaving like her brain is on fire with blueprints. Symbols of wisdom and fate and irony. Subtle jabs at other gods hidden in corner patterns. There's one that, if you look closely, resembles Zeus getting slapped by a lightning bolt that clearly has Hera's signature. And then the real accident happens. You see, one day, Apollo struts in. He's radiant as usual, shirtless as usual, holding a lyre and humming something that sounds suspiciously like a melody from a mortal beach party. He sees the tapestry. He blinks, and for once in his extremely long life, he goes quiet. Then he pouts. "Why doesn't my temple have one of these?" he mutters, which Athena, who isn't even looking up, says, "Because you tried to glue sequins to marble and called it art." Apollo glares. It was innovative. And just like that, a challenge is born. He declares, in front of everyone, including Hermes, who is definitely going to tweet this to the underworld, that he's going to compose a song so good it makes Athena's tapestry look like napkin doodles. Athena doesn't even flinch. "Okay," she says, winding another thread onto her shuttle. "I accept." The word accept echoes through the halls like an earthquake made of smugness. Suddenly, the other gods perk up. Challenges between gods don't often happen, and when they do, they usually involve throwing mountains or seducing mortals disguised as farm animals. But this is art, tasteful competition, petty, passive-aggressive, deliciously civilized. They gather. Poseidon brings snacks, Aphrodite paints her nails and pretends not to care. Even Hestia shows up, and she never leaves the hearth. But before Apollo can strum a single note, Athena unveils her next tapestry. And you can feel the entire atmosphere shift. It's enormous, larger than anything she's made before, almost too big for the wall. Threads of silver and twilight blue and sun-bleached flax form intricate scenes. Mortals planting olive trees, children learning to read, a woman weaving beside her sick husband, her cloth looping through both grief and hope. And in one quiet corner, a small, shaded figure of Athena herself, unarmed, unarmored, simply watching. It's intimate. It's soft. It's powerful in the way whispering in a storm feels powerful. When Apollo finally performs, his music is beautiful. Absolutely. It weaves sound like Athena weaves thread. Harmonic, emotional, flawless. But it doesn't change anyone. Not like her tapestry does. Even Zeus admits it, albeit through gritted teeth and a generous amount of thunder-related distraction. Now, this wasn't Athena's plan. She wasn't trying to win anything. She just wanted to tell stories in a new way. But now that there has been a challenge and a winner, something shifts. The gods start whispering about a new kind of game, a new way to compete without swords or storms, artistic battle. And the mortals? Well, they hear about it too. Word trickles down through temples and traveling bards. Suddenly, everyone wants to try. Not just divine weaving, but competitive weaving. Not just for function or beauty, but to prove skill, to win. Villages host little contests.
Who can make the strongest rope, the most even cloth, the tapestry that tells the most moving story of your goat's escape from the neighbor's cabbage patch? It's friendly, mostly. Sometimes a little bitter. You visit a mortal town and see it for yourself. Two old women furiously nodding at opposite ends of a loom while a crowd eats figs and places bets. A teenager sneaks in, trying to mimic Athena's olive branch pattern. A local priest tries to mediate, but the tension is already warped in the threads. You can't help but smile. Athena never meant for this to happen. But now, weaving is more than just a craft. It's a spectacle. Historians still argue whether this was the true origin of competitive textile guilds in the ancient Greek world. Some say the evidence points to later periods, others believe the rise of weaving contests correlates directly with an unexplained boom in loom production after a certain mysterious olive harvest. And then there's the weird inscription found near the temple of Athena Polias, scratched hurriedly into stone, that reads simply, "Never bet against the goddess with the loom." You sigh and lean back, your eyes starting to flutter. The sky above Olympus sifts to soft pink like spun sugar, and the gods return to their usual bickering. But Athena, she's working on something else again. This time with a mortal girl in mind. A girl who doesn't know what's coming. A girl with a gift and a mouth. And a challenge that will unravel more than just thread.
Hey guys! Tonight we drift high above the clouds and into the marble halls of Mount Olympus, where the gods are loud, their sandals are louder, and someone is always starting drama about nectar rations. You find yourself padding quietly across a floor of gold-veined stone, flanked by pillars that shimmer with lightning and boredom. The sky outside shifts from purple to deeper purple, and the clouds seem too fluffy to be trustworthy. Athena is already here, of course, towering, poised, and doing her best to look disinterested in everything. You notice her helmet sits on a polished pedestal, collecting dust. She hasn't worn it in ages. She's still technically the goddess of war and wisdom, but war's gotten repetitive, and wisdom, well, it doesn't pay what it used to. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always find it amazing how these sleepy stories connect us across time zones, couches, and cozy nests of blankets. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander past a column where Hermes has scrawled something immature in divine script, and into the heart of the great hall where the gods are gathered in another weekly meeting that definitely could have been an email. Zeus is pretending to listen to a minor god's complaint about barley shortages while surreptitiously braiding his own beard. Hera is fuming silently because her ceremonial peacock spilled something sticky on her robe. You sit quietly in the back and observe, which, given Olympus's track record, is probably safest. Athena rests her chin on one hand, elbow on marble, expressions somewhere between dignified and "I could be inventing mathematics right now." You can tell she's not really listening either. Her thoughts are elsewhere, tangled up in mortal things. What humans are doing, what they're building, and whether they're using the tools she graciously gave them to make anything actually useful. You might assume the gods are above petty bickering, but really, they're ancient influencers with fewer filters. Apollo keeps showing off his sun chariot routes like a fitness tracker. Poseidon's still bitter that Athens chose Athena over him. He mutters, "should have picked salt water," under his breath every third Tuesday. Even Dionysus is sulking because no one laughed at his new mortal wine hybrid. Historians still argue whether it gave people visions or just an aggressive headache. But tonight, as the wind drifts softly through the open halls and owl feathers swirl underfoot, Athena is quieter than usual. She's thinking about hands, mortal hands specifically, how they fumble and fidget, how they make things. She's noticed that when humans aren't fighting or worshiping or inventing cheese for some reason, They weave, they braid grass, they twist vines, they knot strings. Something primal, almost meditative. Athena, you see, is fascinated by order, patterns, logic, geometry hiding inside chaos. The more she watches mortal women twist fibers into thread, the more curious she becomes. Not jealous exactly, she's a goddess, but interested, inspired even. You can almost see her fingers twitch with ideas. And so, when the council adjourns, with no decisions made and 5 fresh grudges born, Athena stands up abruptly and says something vague about air circulation research before vanishing in a flash of olive-scented mist. No one follows. They've learned not to when she gets like this. The last time she disappeared mid-meeting, she came back with a glowing coin that doubled as a calendar. It caused a minor recession in 3 regions. She reappears in a mortal village, not one of the grand cities, but a smaller one, nestled in the crook of a river like a lazy cat. It's twilight. Mortals are winding down, feeding goats, yelling at kids to come inside, pretending not to notice strange glowing women wandering around in owl-themed armor. She walks unnoticed to a quiet home where a girl is spinning thread with her grandmother. The spindle hums in rhythm with the chirping of crickets. The goddess crouches in the shadows watching the motions. The girl isn't even good at it. Her threads are uneven, tangled, but there's something honest about it, something pleasing. It's here, in the lull of an ordinary evening, that Athena gets her first idea. Not a war strategy, not a philosophical treatise, just a pattern. A small, neat twist of thread that wants to become something more. That night, while the mortals sleep, Athena returns to Olympus. She doesn't summon her armor or her shield. She opens the heavy cedar chest at the foot of her chamber and begins pulling out odd things: feathers, bones, spider silk, and even some mysterious golden hair that might have once belonged to Apollo's favorite harp. She builds the first loom. Not the first thing ever made for weaving, of course. Humans had been twisting stuff together for centuries. But this loom is different. It's divine. It hums when touched. It glows faintly when you whisper to it. It doesn't ask for offerings, just thread. The next morning, a dozen gods knock on Athena's chamber door, wondering about the strange noise. She shoos them away with vague comments about experimental textiles. She's already deep into the work. Threads looped and crossed, patterns emerging, some mathematical, some symbolic, all stitched with a kind of sacred intensity that even the sun pauses a little on its arc. This is how it begins, not with war, not prophecy, or even a dramatic thunderbolt, but with a goddess kneeling before a wooden frame, pulling threads tight with ancient fingers, humming to herself like a mortal grandmother. It's peaceful, beautiful, a little boring, perfect for sleep, and absolutely about to spiral out of control.
The sun barely creeps over the horizon, stretching lazy fingers across the rooftops of Lydia, but the village square is already packed. You hover near the back, where an old man sells fig cakes and gossips with his goat. The air tastes like anticipation and slightly burnt wool, because today isn't just any day. Today is the showdown. In one corner, Athena, goddess of wisdom, warfare, and strategic accessorizing. Hair braided like she's preparing for battle, robes crisp enough to cut glass. She doesn't look angry, she looks focused, like a general planning 5 battles ahead. In the other corner, Arachne, teenage mortal with the energy of someone who's never faced actual consequences. She's already rolling her sleeves up and stretching like she's about to run a marathon. Her hair is a mess. She's got a smudge of charcoal on her nose. She's completely unbothered. And smack in the middle, 2 looms, identical, side by side, as if the gods themselves want this to be fair. The looms creak quietly, waiting. The threads are already set. The crowd hushes. Even the birds take a break from singing. Athena nods once. Begin. And so it begins. You watch in silence as thread slips through fingers, patterns form, and stories unfold in woven light. Athena's tapestry starts fast, smooth,
elegant, almost regal. She weaves the gods at their most glorious, Zeus ruling the skies, Poseidon taming seas, Artemis lighting up forest, even Dionysus with surprisingly excellent posture. The scenes flow seamlessly, one into the next, like pages in a divine scrapbook. Every thread hums with power and control. She's not just weaving a story. She's weaving a thesis. This is who we are, and this is why we rule. Arachne, by contrast, works like she's angry at the loom. Her fingers fly. Her pattern is chaotic at first, jagged edges, twisted threads, but then it sharpens. Arachne doesn't glorify the gods. She exposes them. One scene shows Zeus transforming into a swan, a bull, a shower of gold, always chasing mortal women. There's another showing Apollo punishing a flute player for daring to challenge him. There's Hera strawing thread and actual plagues over petty jealousies. Dionysus is passed out again, wine bottle in hand. Even Athena herself is included, standing over Medusa, eyes hard and unblinking. The crowd stares. Mouths fall open. Whispers start. You feel your own chest tighten, because Arachne's tapestry isn't just bold, it's accurate, painfully so. It's the kind of truth that makes people squirm, the kind that peels back divine polish and shows the cracks. And the technique? Flawless. Her shading? Impossibly smooth. Her details? Unnervingly precise. She's not mocking the gods. She's documenting them. Historians still argue whether Arachne had some secret help, divine possession maybe, or a vision granted by fate itself. Some even claim the fates were watching, whispering suggestions into her ear. But most agree, she wasn't just talented, she was transcendent. Athena sees it too. She doesn't stop weaving, but her jaw tightens. Her threads grow taut. Her pattern shifts, less smooth, more intense. She has lightning, mountains cracking, mortals worshipping in awe. As if to say, yes, we're flawed, but we are power itself. Still, Arachne doesn't flinch. Her fingers don't slow. Her face is calm, focused. She's not doing this for praise. She's doing this because it has to be said. The looms fall silent at the same time. Athena steps back, so does Arachne. They don't speak. No one moves. And then, because silence can be a scream, Athena walks forward and inspects the tapestry. Her own, perfect, powerful, safe. Arachne's, true. Painfully, undeniably true. Athena's hand lifts. You expect thunder, fire, maybe the tapestry turned to ash. But instead, her fingers tremble. There's a pause. A crack in the divine armor. Then her voice, quiet, brittle. You are not wrong. And for a moment, the goddess seemed human. But then the mask returns again. The goddess sprintens. Her face hardens, not out of malice, but fear. Fear of losing control, of the floodgates opening, of truth becoming rebellion. And she whispers, a curse. Not one of fire or plague, not even death. Just a transformation. A gift twisted. So proud of your weaving? Then weave forever. And with that, Arachne stumbles. Her fingers twitch. Her limbs pull inward. Legs bend and multiply. Her skin ripples into dark fuzz. Her eyes widen, too wide. Her mouth opens, but no words escape. She shrinks. You blink. And there, where the girl once stood, is a spider. 8 legs, a small body, still. Then, slowly, delicately, it begins to spin a thread. Soft, perfect, trembling. The crowd gasp. Some scream. Some kneel. Athena, she doesn't gloat. She turns, silent, and walks away. The tapestry remains, both of them, hanging side by side, threads humming softly in the breeze. And somewhere high above, a single owl circles once before vanishing into the sun.
You sit in the silence that follows, a silence so deep it makes your ears ring.
The crowd had scattered, some afraid, some ashamed, some just confused. Only a few linger, staring at the loom still holding the two tapestries. One a hymn to godly glory, the other a harsh mirror of divine imperfection. And in between them, dangling from the edge of the table, a small brown spider spins thread in silence. Arachne is gone, at least in the form mortals remember. But her work, her story, her defiance, that lingers. It crawls through the whispers of villagers and across temple walls, where someone has already carved a crude image of a spider holding a shuttle. Athena returns to Olympus with heavy steps and a heavier heart. She doesn't speak of what happened, not at first, not to anyone, even when Hermes pries. "So, how was your mortal vacation? Did you finally get into macrame?" She just raises one eyebrow in a way that makes him pretend he forgot the question. But you see it. You see how she avoids her old loom. You see how her owl stares too long at empty corners of the chamber. You see how the air hangs thick around her, like threads unspun. She visits her olive grove more often now, the same one where she first watched the spider spin, where she thought structure and elegance could be enough. She sits under the same tree, cross-legged in the grass, and stares at her hands. Not because she regrets creating the loom, but because she knows she made something that escaped her. What was once a peaceful craft, an escape from war, a balm for boredom, has become something sharp, something competitive, something that mirrors power. Mortals, of course, seize on this shift like seagulls on unattended picnic grapes. You return to the village of Lydia a few days later. You find small gatherings in the square, girls and boys learning to weave from local elders, not to worship, not even to rebel, just to create. But beneath the calm is a tension, a spark, the knowledge that weaving can now say something. And it does. One cloth features a woman giving birth alone under moonlight. Another shows a child leading an old man through a crowded market. One particularly daring tapestry depicts a donkey kicking a statue of Zeus. No one's sure what it means, but it's popular. Weaving is no longer just domestic. It's political. It's personal. It's performative. Enter stage left, the weaving contest. It starts small. Village fairs, harvest festivals, temple fundraisers. Who can create the most detailed pattern in 3 days? Who can weave the lightest blanket? Who can embroider an entire myth using only 2 colors? The winners get olive wreaths and bragging rights. The losers get determined. And everyone talks about Arachne. Not always by name. Some whisper the first spider. Others just say the girl who dared. Historians still argue whether these contests predate organized textile guilds in Greece. Some point to earlier examples in Egypt and Mesopotamia, but most agree Greek weaving took on new energy after this point. Fabric wasn't just utility, it was identity. Even the gods take notice. Aphrodite commissions a gown woven with scenes of lovers escaping angry parents. Hephaestus starts designing mechanical shuttles, though they mostly explode. Dionysus sponsors a weaving party where all the fabric is wine-colored and no one remembers how it ended. But Athena, she stays distant. She watches. Sometimes she appears in dreams, silent, owl-eyed, standing beside mortal looms. Sometimes women wake with ideas they swear weren't theirs. And once in a tiny coastal town, a woman weaves a tapestry of a spider building its web under the moon. The next morning, her olive tree blooms out of season. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Athena is weaving, just quieter now. Because here's the strange, sleepy truth. Athena never meant to create a competition. She wanted peace, focus, the simplicity of warp and weft. But boredom doesn't stay innocent forever. You stretch out on warm stone beneath the stars, eyes drifting toward a constellation that might just look like a loom, or a spider, or both. And somewhere below, another girl picks up a shuttle for the first time, unaware of the threads she's stepping into. The wind shifts. You roll to your side, half asleep, as a breeze flutters through olive leaves and carries whispers from villages far beyond Lydia. Whispers of a goddess and a girl, of a challenge spun in thread, of a truth that couldn't be unstitched. You follow the whispers. They lead you through sleepy towns and half-crumbled stone paths, past sleepy goats and grandmothers who never stopped weaving, into a world where thread now matters in a way it never did before. And eventually, you find yourself in the middle of a courtyard in Corinth, where the pettiest competition in mythology is well underway. That's not its official name, of course. The temple priestesses call it the Festival of Craft, and the local merchants refer to it as the big fabric thing that brings in the tourists. But make no mistake, what's happening here is a passive-aggressive artistic showdown so intense it could singe your sandals. You arrive just in time to see two women glaring at each other over a massive shared loom. One is a veteran weaver, with arms like twisted rope and a scowl that could petrify a cyclops. The other is a young prodigy, wearing a dyed tunic so bold it might actually be illegal in some temples. Their challenge? To weave a version of the myth of Persephone that doesn't make anyone look bad. You watch in awe as one chooses symbolism, pomegranates stitched with gold thread, shadows cut into silk. The other goes literal. Demeter in mid-rage, Hades in full emo cape, Persephone in a mix of confusion and seasonal depression. And the audience? They are into it. They murmur, they point, they clap at shading details. One man starts weeping at the depiction of maternal grief rendered in linen folds. You realize, somewhere between the drama and the dye baths, that weaving has become theater. And it's not just women. Men too, though they arrive more sheepishly, as if afraid the loom will judge them. Still, you see one young man crafting an epic of Heracles using only black and white wool. He calls it the muscles of regret. It's awful, but the effort, sincere. Even kids participate. They make smaller looms and compete to see who can create the straightest lines or the funniest sheep. One girl weaves a snake into every background scene and refuses to explain why. She's probably going places. Athena, for her part, doesn't show up. Not in person. But sometimes the winners claim their yarn glows faintly afterward. Sometimes a single owl feather appears on the ground where no bird could have flown. And occasionally a pattern forms so perfectly, so mathematically divine, that it couldn't have come from just human hands. Historians still argue whether this era was the beginning of formalized textile guilds, women's spaces of learning, artistry, and economic autonomy. Some credit Arachne's myth as the symbolic birth of the artistic woman in opposition to power. Others roll their eyes and say, "It's cloth, relax." But weaving has changed permanently. Because here's the thing no one says aloud. Everyone is still afraid of spiders. No one kills them anymore. That much is clear. Instead, when a spider descends from a rafter or sets up shop in a corner, people whisper blessings. They offer scraps of wool. Some even leave unfinished embroidery nearby as if hoping the little creature will improve it overnight. You chuckle to yourself the first time you see it. A spider spinning its web over a partially woven scene, half sunset, half olive tree. It doesn't disrupt the pattern. It adds to it. A new layer, a quiet voice. You drift, letting the loom sounds of the city wash over you. Threads tightening, shuttles clicking, voices murmuring over patterns, dispute settled not with shouting, but with another round of weaving. This is what Athena accidentally invented. A competition, yes, but also a dialogue. A way for mortals to answer back, to claim space, to weave their own truths into the very fabric of myth. And she's watching.
Somewhere in a high chamber built of polished stone and owl feathers, the goddess of wisdom studies a piece of thread between her fingers. Not because she wants to win anything, but because deep down she still believes in the pattern, even if it occasionally bites back.
You wake to the soft swish of fabric and a thread of tension in the air, almost literal, like a warp string pulled just a bit too tight. You're no longer in a cozy village courtyard, but drifting across the edge of myth itself, where gods peek over clouds and mortals risk threading truth through sacred stories. What you see next is scandalous. You're in a new city now, Athens, just after sunrise. The air smells of fresh bread, lamp oil, and a hint of drama. A tapestry has just been hung on the temple wall, and people are already whispering. You float closer. It's unmistakably an Arachne-style piece, only it doesn't come from Lydia. It's from a young Athenian weaver named Athena, who's made a name for herself by, let's say, leaning into controversy. And this latest work? It's a full-on exposé. The tapestry is huge, larger than any seen in Athens before. At first glance, it seems traditional. Gods in glory, Olympus gleaming, mortals gazing upward in worship. But then, look closer. The expressions. That's where it hits. Zeus, flashing his lightning, also flashes a smug grin and wondering eyes. Apollo plays his lyre, but clearly ignores a mortal's plea. And there, tucked in the background, is Athena herself. Not as a warrior, not as a guide, but as a cold observer watching Medusa's hair become serpents. Not lifting a hand, not speaking, just watching. The crowd doesn't know what to do with it. Some gasp, some cheer. One man faints, though that might be heat stroke. The temple priestess tries to claim it's symbolic, which nobody's buying, because for the first time, a tapestry is holding the gods accountable, and not in jest, in judgment. Athena appears that night. You sense her presence like a breeze that makes every lamp flicker at once. She stands before the tapestry for a long time, her owl perched silently beside her. She doesn't speak, doesn't rage, just studies it. This time there's no divine punishment, no transformation, no thunder. She turns and walks away, but the message is received. Because the next morning the tapestry is gone. No one saw it removed, no one heard a rustle. But where it once hung, there's only an olive branch, fresh, glistening with dew and bound with golden thread. A truth, maybe, or a warning. Historians still argue which. Because this is the moment weaving shifts again. Before it was craft, then art, then a form of competition. Now it's protest. Weaving becomes a medium for stories not told in official temple scripts. For the sidelined, the wronged, the misrepresented. Tapestries start showing myths from strange angles. Persephone's loneliness, Medusa's fear, Hera's heartbreak. The reaction? Mixed. Some temples ban certain weavings, others embrace them, eager for relevance. A whole new sect of priestesses rises, ones who weave instead of preach, who spin prayers into thread and let the pattern speak. Even mortal law responds. In Thebes, a ruling is passed, no tapestry may portray a god in disgraceful manner, which naturally inspires more tapestries doing exactly that, usually with extra sparkle. Athena becomes a name whispered and revered. Some call her reckless. Others say she channels Arachne's spirit. One overenthusiastic poet insists she is Arachne reincarnated. He's mostly ignored, but his poem does rhyme nicely. Athena, to her credit, doesn't interfere. She withdraws further into the olive grove, more contemplative than ever. She doesn't regret creating the loom, nor does she regret the Arachne challenge. But you sense she's realizing the depth of what's been set loose. You catch her one twilighted evening, alone, fingers wrapped around a spindle,
She's weaving again. Not a tapestry this time, just a small, simple piece of cloth. No message, no protest. Just texture and symmetry. A quiet thing. A grounding thing. And as the owl watches, she whispers something to the threads. Let them speak. You exhale. The winds shift again. Weaving has become the sharpest thread in the fabric of myth, a way to praise, to question, to remember. And while Athena may have turned away from judgment, the looms, they remember everything.
The loom creaks beneath your feet as you drift further along this quiet, tangled journey. The threads below you twist into new shapes, softer now, stranger, but still undeniably connected to that very first goddess who once tried weaving as a way to escape war. But you're not in Olympus anymore. You're in a dark little house lit only by an oil lamp and the rhythmic swish of a shuttle sliding back and forth. There's a woman here, older, with silver streaks in her hair and calluses on her fingertips. She's weaving by memory now, not for show, not for temples, not even for sale. She's weaving because she must. And hanging on the wall behind her, next to a row of drying herbs and a slanted painting of Dionysus falling off a donkey, is a spider web. The spider sits motionless in the center, 8 legs like delicate thoughts, and as the woman weaves, the spider spins. 2 crafts, 2 instincts, 2 stories being told in silence. This house isn't special, not to scholars anyway. But if you ask the villagers, they'll whisper that she's one of them, a descendant, a daughter of thread, one of the many mortals said to carry the spirit of Arachne, not her body, not her punishment, but her gift. Because Arachne never really left. Athena's curse didn't erase her, it shifted her. Arachne became something else, something immortal in a way the gods never intended. Her story got into the threads, into the very act of weaving itself. And now, every time someone pulls a needle through cloth with a flick of defiance, every time someone dares stitch something a little too honest into a pattern, she's there. Of course, the gods pretend otherwise. On Olympus, Athena still maintains a dignified silence on the matter. But you notice she no longer corrects people when they say the word Arachne. She no longer rolls her eyes when mortals leave offerings near spiderwebs. She just watches. Still, she has regrets. One evening, in the olive grove, she speaks to the owl, not expecting it to answer, but simply to hear the words out loud. I didn't want her gone, only humbled. The owl turns its head slowly. It does not hoot. Athena stares into the dark canopy above, fingers twitching for thread she isn't holding. She could have been the best of us. Historians still debate the intent behind Arachne's punishment. Was it wrath? Was it justice? Was it, gasp, a lesson in humility? Others argue it was fear, not of Arachne, but of what she represented. A mortal who didn't ask for permission, who didn't defer, who matched a goddess, not with lightning or spells, but with art. And worse, a mortal who won. You float now through other homes, other towns, women and men and children spinning, braiding, knotting. It's all connected. A boy stitches animals into his cloak. A widow embroiders her grief. A girl sews her dreams into the lining of a shawl, so no one can see them unless they look too closely. And across them all, the same quiet echo, Arachne's gift.
Somewhere in a bustling port town, a loom master tells an apprentice every thread remembers. He doesn't explain. He doesn't need to. And in a different town, a young woman stands up during a festival and says, "Weaving is power." No one laughs, because it is. It always was. Athena's curse was meant to silence Arachne. Instead, it scattered her voice like pollen. Now she blooms everywhere, quietly, persistently, unignorably. You look up. The night sky stretches wide, and for a moment the stars connect like warp and weft, a vast cosmic loom, a spider's web across the heavens. And you realize something. Athena may have invented divine weaving, but Arachne, she made it human.
You drift now through the folds of mortal history, woven not in marble or scroll, but in soft, fibrous memory. Threads flutter in the wind, drying on lines between clay brick houses. Cloth dances like gossip, and weaving, once a domestic whisper, has become a full-volume chorus. You're in a marketplace now, not sacred, not royal, just loud, hot, and reeking of olive oil and ambition. Bolts of fabric unfurl across vendor stalls, some plain, some glorious, some absurd, like the one with a hand-stitched goat riding a chariot, which the merchant insists is symbolically powerful. You do not argue. He has a loom-shaped tattoo on his bicep and intense opinions about thread count. What's clear is that weaving isn't quiet anymore. It's everywhere. In this new age, everyone's trying to outdo everyone else. And while most participants are women, the backbone, the braid, the base of all textile traditions, men are trying to get in on it now, too. Enter the Glorious Failure Parade. You see him, a young nobleman with perfect teeth and zero humility, standing before a loom he definitely didn't warp himself. His fingers fumble across the shuttle like he's holding it for the first time. He's trying to depict the Battle of Marathon, but it mostly looks like a soup explosion in wool. You lean closer. Someone whispers, "He trained in Sparta for 3 days." Someone else adds, "He thinks weaving is intellectual combat." He steps back dramatically to reveal a jagged mess of knots, loose threads, and a suspicious stain shaped like a fish. The crowd claps politely, mostly because his father funds the local amphitheater. But failure doesn't stop them. Men form their own weaving clubs, secret societies with dramatic names like the Order of the Threaded Wisdom or the Gentlemen of the Golden Weft. They publish scrolls debating the merits of flax over linen. One even tries to submit a woven poem to the Delphic oracle. It's rejected, politely. And yet, some succeed. Not in mimicking women, but in creating something new. One elderly man develops a simplified shuttle for arthritis. Another invents an adjustable tension bar that changes how rugs are made. A philosopher writes an essay comparing loom structure to logic itself. Historians still debate whether this marks the beginning of technical textile theory, a blend of engineering, aesthetics, and armchair egos. But the fringe community insists this is when men finally realized the warp is not a spear, and that's okay. Meanwhile, the women just keep weaving. They form guilds, not secretive, not snobby, just skilled. They teach each other. They pass down techniques. They develop motifs unique to their towns. Sea waves in port cities, grain stalks in farming villages, stars in mountain temples. And in every cloth, a whisper of Arachne. Some even begin signing their work. A radical act. Not just initials, but names, tiny stitched in the corner. A declaration, "I made this. I am here." It's not always safe. In Corinth, a woman's tapestry criticizing a local governor mysteriously goes missing.
In Delphi, one priest orders a loom burned after it depicts Apollo sulking over a lost musical contest, but elsewhere the signatures remain. Even the Spartans start taking notice. Yes, Sparta, land of shields and grim silence. Turns out even warriors need cloaks, and when a young Spartan woman weaves a cloak with Athena's owl stitched in the corner, it sparks a wave. Athena is back. Not in form, in presence. You see it in the motifs. Her helmet hidden in wave patterns, her spear disguised as vined. Not worship exactly, but acknowledgement, a nod, a shared glance across time. Athena doesn't stop it. You imagined her smiling just barely as she watches mortals rethread her gift into new forms. One night, in a village on the coast, you lie back beside a crackling loom fire. A grandmother braids sea-colored thread. A child asks who invented weaving. The grandmother smiles and says, a goddess, but the best story came from a spider. And you close your eyes, knowing the answer is both.
You sit in the silence that follows, a silence so deep it makes your ears ring. The crowd has scattered, some afraid, some ashamed, some just confused. Only a few linger, staring at the looms still holding the two tapestries. One, a hymn to godly glory, the other a harsh mirror of divine imperfection. And in between them, dangling from the edge of the table, a small brown spider spins thread in silence. Arachne is gone, at least in the form mortals remember. But her work, her story, her defiance, that lingers. It crawls through the whispers of villagers and across temple walls, where someone has already carved a crude image of a spider holding a shuttle. Athena returns to Olympus with heavy steps and a heavier heart. She doesn't speak of what happened, not at first, not to anyone. Even when Hermes pries, "So how was your mortal vacation? Did you finally get into macrame?" She just raises one eyebrow in a way that makes him pretend he forgot the question. But you see it. You see how she avoids her old loom. You see how her owl stares too long at empty corners of the chamber. You see how the air hangs thick around her, like threads unspun. She visits her olive grove more often now, the same one where she first watched the spider spin, where she thought structure and elegance could be enough. She sits under the same tree, cross-legged in the grass, and stares at her hands. Not because she regrets creating the loom, but because she knows she made something that escaped her. What was once a peaceful craft, an escape from war, a balm for boredom, has become something sharp, something competitive, something that mirrors power. Mortals, of course, seize on this shift like seagulls on unattended picnic grapes. You return to the village of Lydia a few days later. You find small gatherings in the square, girls and boys learning to weave from local elders. Not to worship, not even to rebel, just to create. But beneath the calm is a tension, a spark, the knowledge that weaving can now say something, and it does. One cloth features a woman giving birth alone under moonlight. Another shows a child leading an old man through a crowded market. One particularly daring tapestry depicts a donkey kicking a statue of Zeus. No one's sure what it means, but it's popular. Weaving is no longer just domestic. It's political. It's personal. It's performative. Enter stage left the weaving contest. It starts small, village fairs, harvest festivals, temple fundraisers. Who can create the most detailed pattern in 3 days? Who can weave the lightest blanket? Who can embroider an entire myth using only 2 colors? The winners get olive wreaths and bragging rights. The losers get determined. And everyone talks about Arachne. Not always by name,
Some whisper, the first spider. Others just say, the girl who dared. Historians still argue whether these contests predate organized textile guilds in Greece. Some point to earlier examples in Egypt and Mesopotamia. But most agree Greek weaving took on new energy after this point. Fabric wasn't just utility, it was identity. Even the gods take notice. Aphrodite commissions a garn woven with scenes of lovers escaping angry parents. Hephaestus starts designing mechanical shuttles, though mostly they explode. Dionysus sponsors a weaving party where all the fabric is wine-colored and no one remembers how it ended. But Athena, she stays distant. She watches. Sometimes she appears in dreams, silent, owl-eyed, standing beside mortal looms. Sometimes women wake with ideas they swear weren't theirs. And once, in a tiny coastal town, a woman weaves a tapestry of a spider building its web under the moon. The next morning, her olive tree blooms out of season. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Athena is still weaving, just more quietly now. Because here's the strange, sleepy truth. Athena never meant to create a competition. She wanted peace, focus, the simplicity of warp and weft. But boredom doesn't stay innocent forever. You stretch out on warm stone beneath the stars, eye is drifting toward a constellation that might just look like a loom, or a spider, or both. And somewhere below, another girl picks up a shuttle for the first time, unaware of the threads she's stepping into.
You stir beneath the weight of twilight, that soft moment when even shadows exhale, and your journey takes you to a quiet chamber where everything smells faintly of old wool and pride. The looms here stand silent for now, but their stories hang thick in the air like incense. This is a weaving school, one of many popping up across the Greek world, from Corinth to Delos to little villages you've never heard of. A place where mortals come not just to learn the practical, but to chase the divine. A sanctuary of pattern and precision where everyone wants to touch the thread that once ran through a goddess's fingers. But tonight, it's not the women drawing your attention. It's the men. Yes, again, the men are back, and they're really trying this time. You settle next to a young man named Theogenes who has declared loudly that he wants to redefine the masculine fiber arts. He wears a tunic dyed the color of overcooked eggplant and holds a custom shuttle carved with his name. So far, he's mostly tangled himself in his own warp. I want to weave something bold, he says, something heroic. You watch him try to stitch Achilles fighting Hector into a dish towel. It doesn't go well. But he's not alone. Across the chamber, another man, older, sterner, crafts a tapestry of his family's migration from a mountain village. It's rough, uneven, honest. He doesn't show it to anyone, but he folds it like it matters. Some succeed, many do not. But that's not really the point anymore, is it? Because by now, weaving is no longer just about mastery or myth. It's about participation, claiming space in a world spun by gods and carried forward by mortals who, frankly, were never invited to the table. And sometimes they're still not. There's tension in the room. Some women roll their eyes. Some nod encouragingly. One just mutters, wait until they try embroidery, under her breath. Historians still argue whether these mixed-gender workshops were common or rare, respected or mocked. Some point to surviving contracts, yes, contracts, for woven exports signed by men and women alike. Others say the men simply wove on the edges, both literally and metaphorically. But either way, the warped threads stretch out, and mortals keep tugging.
It helps that the loom itself is evolving. No longer a clunky vertical frame with uneven tension and a tendency to fall over if the goat sneezes. Thanks to a tinkerer named Demetrius, who claims divine inspiration after hitting his head on a ladder. Looms now have adjustable sidebars, better tension control, and built-in storage for dyes. This revolutionizes everything. Weaving moves into the public eye. It becomes a social activity, a performance, a ritual. Markets host live demonstrations. Theaters hang tapestries as backdrops. Even political debates start using woven props to sway opinion. "Look at this rug," one senator shouts. "This is what tax reform could feel like." And there, at the center of this tapestry explosion, stands Athena. Not in form, in presence. Every workshop has a tiny olive wood carving. Every guild seal includes an owl. Some weavers begin each session with a whispered prayer. "Guide my hand. Quiet my doubt. Show me the pattern I need." But Athena never answers directly. Instead, she sends suggestions. A thread that never tangles, a Gruken loom that suddenly begins working again, a breeze that carries the scent of flax at just the right moment to inspire a new design. And sometimes, only sometimes, she visits in dreams. Never with grandeur, just a quiet figure in the corner of the mind, nodding once at a job well done. You smile as you pass a small cottage workshop where a family weaves together in the last light of day. The mother handles the shuttle, the father sets the tension, the children sort colors by instinct alone. On the wall behind them hangs a rough tapestry of a spider, an owl, and a single olive branch stitched with clumsy reverence. Because the story hasn't faded. Not yet. Not ever. Arachne still spins in the corners of the room, silent but busy. Athena still watches, still considers, still wonders what might have happened if she'd walked away instead of spoken that fateful curse. But it's too late for that. The thread is loose, and the mortals are weaving it into something all their own.
Night drapes itself gently over the hills of Attica, and the looms fall still. For a moment, the world seems to exhale. You follow the hush back up toward the heights of Olympus, where the clouds glow soft gold and violet, as though the sunset left a secret behind just for the gods. Athena sits alone. Not at her loom, not tonight. Tonight she's in her olive grove again, fingers wrapped around a spindle, but not spinning, just holding it. Her owl is nowhere in sight, and even the wind has the courtesy to whisper instead of howl. She is thinking. You can tell because the stars around her pulse a little slower, the olives gleam a little duller, and a tiny scroll, probably a celestial newsletter, sits unopened beside her. What's on her mind? You, mortals, and that girl. Because now the world is different. Not because a war ended or a law was passed, but because one mortal wove something too powerful to be unmade. And Athena, she knows it. You can see her looking out across the horizon, where looms click and shuttles fly. She doesn't need to visit any more. The stories come to her, every thread pulled in reverence, every tapestry stitched in defiance, every secret pattern woven into the hem of a tunic. She never meant to cause this. She just wanted order, peace, a space away from divine chaos where she could breathe in the rhythm of the thread. But the loom took on a life, and what she sees now is not just competition or even rebellion, it's inheritance. Mortals have taken the loom and made it theirs. They stitch births and funerals, hopes and protests, prayers, fears,
even jokes. There's one tapestry in Delphi that features Hermes tripping on his own wings no fewer than 16 times. Historians still debate whether Athena regrets it all, whether the punishment of Arachne was a divine misstep or a necessary balance. But you, sitting here in the silence of Olympus, sense something quieter in her heart. Not regret, but recognition. Because weaving, in its most honest form, was never about control. It was about connection. Each thread touches another. No loop exists in isolation. Even a spider's web trembles when a leaf falls across it. Every story is tied to someone else's story. Athena sees this now. She watches mortals stitch together meaning from myth. She watches men and women write themselves into cloth. She watches children invent new patterns that don't belong to gods at all. And most unexpectedly, she smiles. Soft, real. She reaches for a basket, half forgotten beside the roots of her oldest olive tree, and pulls out a tangle of leftover thread. Gold, copper, night blue, some old, some new. She begins to weave again, but differently this time. Not to teach, not to prove, not even to protect. Just to feel the pattern unfold, just to hear the shuttles hum, just to be part of something larger than herself. The tapestry will be small, quiet, the kind of piece you tuck under your arm and gift to someone without fanfare. No symbolism, no olive branches, just rhythm, texture, humanity. Because after everything, after gods and curses, spiders and scandal, Athena finally understands you don't control the pattern, you move through it.
You drift one last time through the tapestry of this story, following the final thread as it curls around your mind like a lullaby. The loom is slower now, its rhythm gentle, almost meditative. You've passed through scandal and silence, from goddess to mortal, from thread to thunder. And now all that remains is legacy and sleep. But first you land softly in a small home near the edge of the known world. Not a palace, not a temple, just a cottage with a sagging roof, a cracked hearth, and a loom older than the floor itself. A girl sits beside it. She's no Arachne, not in skill, not in scandal. She yawns every few minutes, wipes her nose with her sleeve, and keeps tangling her yarn. But she hums as she works. Not a song of defiance or glory, just something soft her mother used to sing while braiding her hair. The tapestry she weaves isn't impressive, not yet. It's crooked, sparse. She's not even sure what she's trying to make. A memory, maybe, or a story she only half remembers. Her fingers hesitate on the loom as she debates whether to add a river or a horse or maybe a tree. You watch unseen. And then she makes a choice. She adds a spider. Tiny, almost hidden in the corner. She doesn't know the full story. She only remembers someone once told her that spiders were sacred, that they used to be women, that weaving was their gift. She keeps stitching. A breeze rattles the shutters. The olive tree outside rustles with old secrets. And somewhere, high, high above, Athena's owl circles once and fades into the stars. The world is quieter now. No more competitions, no more punishments, just threads. Hundreds of thousands of threads stretched across generations, weaving everything together. Gods and mortals, mistakes and miracles, truths and tales. A pattern too complex for any single loom. You wonder, just briefly, if Athena ever finished that final piece, the quiet one, made of leftover thread, woven for no one in particular. Maybe she didn't.
Maybe it's still on her lap, unfinished, waiting for a mortal's thread to complete it. Maybe it was never hers to finish, because that's what weaving really is, in the end, a shared story. And as you close your eyes, the loom fades from view, but the sound remains, a gentle swish, back and forth, like waves, like breath, like time itself wrapping around you, and you finally rest. So now the loom stills, the threads go quiet, and the story that began with a bored goddess and a teenage girl full of fire dissolves gently into sleep. You let the images unwind behind your eyelids, Athena in her olive grove, hands soft with thread, Arachne's daring hands and sharper tongue, a world slowly changing stitch by stitch, quietly shaped not by war, not by prophecy, but by patterns pulled through cloth and care. The night air is cool now, brushing against your cheek like worn linen. The sky above stretches endlessly, dark and calm, freckled with stars like embroidery across a black velvet canvas. You imagine the constellations as weavings too, threads of light stitched by unseen hands. Maybe Arachne's hands, maybe yours. Each loop is slow now, each thought softer than the last. You don't need to remember every detail. The lesson isn't in the myth's precision, it's in its presence, in the way it soothed your breath, in the way it threaded something ancient through your sleep. You're part of it now, not just the listener, the dreamer, the thread. So go ahead, let the last bit of tension slip from your shoulders. Let the story loosen its hold. Let the fabric of your thoughts fade into dusk. You're safe here. Nothing else to do. Nothing to fix. No gods to impress. Only dreams to weave. And long, slow rest to fall into. Shh. Sleep well. You've earned it.